Hello everyone and welcome back to Clinical Cousins YouTube channel, where today we're going to go over our vestibular sense, or simply put, how do our ears keep us balanced and deal with the accelerations of our head. Well, we need to know first that our vestibular organs are located within our temporal bone and are next to our cochlea. So we have these three semicircular canals on either side. We have the superior, we have the horizontal, and then we have the posterior. Each of these canals has a bulge shown here in blue called the ampulla. So the ampulla is where our vestibular hair cells are located. These are receptor cells that are connected to the ampulla and look like this, and we'll go over that in a little bit. But the important thing is that these semicircular canals are all connected to the utricle, and it is above the hanging saccule. That one is it's not hard to remember, but the utricle and the saccule are home to these otolith organs, which are essentially just clumps of mucopolysaccharide and calcium carbonate crystals. Remember, otolith, oto meaning ear and lith meaning rock. These are basically just ear rocks. So let's talk about how these vestibular hair cells, what they look like and what do they do. So what do they look like? I've drawn one here, and we know that these have a cell body and they have a fixed kinocilium hair that is next to these little orange stereocilia. These are the movable ones. So all of the cilia, all of these little hairs are surrounded by copula, which is a gel-like substance. It's very gelatinous, which means it's very jiggly. So how does our brain sense its own movement using these types of cells? Well, picture this scenario. We have our right and our left horizontal canals. We see that we have the left and the right ampulla here. These are where the hair cells are. I've drawn one really big one to represent all of the little hair cells that are in there. So think of the ampulla like a car, and the cilia are like little passengers inside that car. So whenever you accelerate a car, you go back into your seat, and whenever you stop, you slam on the brakes, you go forward in your seat. This is exactly how this works. So it's important to know that when these little cilia, these little stereocilia, bend toward or away a kinocilium, they depolarize or hyperpolarize, and that is the basis of how our brain keeps track of how our head is moving at different times. So keep the idea of an accelerating car in your head for this example, which involves head movement. So we have head movement, we're going to have an initial reaction, and then we're going to have a late reaction. Right here, this is like I sawed off the head. We're looking at a guy who is looking this way. We're looking down on his head to see what exactly happens. So let's say that we quickly turn this guy's head to the right. The acceleration of our head will actually cause our right-sided kinocilium to go this way. Remember, car's accelerating this way, which means these guys are going to be glued to their seats. This also causes the left stereocilia to move away from the stiff kinocilium. So when a stereocilia is moved toward a kinocilium, like on this right side, we can see that they become depolarized. So we can see that turning our head to the right initially depolarizes the right vestibular cells in the horizontal canal on the right side of our body. So we can also see an initial hyperpolarization of our left vestibular cells in the horizontal canal on the left side, because these stereocilia are moving away from our kinocilium. However, when our head stops moving, it's like we've slammed on the brakes. These cilia are still moving inside this gelatinous copula. So we know now that they're going to go in the opposite direction. So what happens when they go in the opposite direction? Well, you probably could have guessed it already, but we know that the stereocilia on the right side are now moving away from our kinocilium. Wow, so this means that this is going to become hyperpolarized. And we know that the stereocilia on the left side, on the left ampulla, on the left horizontal canal, are now moving toward the kinocilium. So now these are going to become depolarized. So let's think about what just happened. Our head moved to the right. Think about the car, this is being the car, and all these little cilia, these kinocilium, these stereocilia, these are all passengers in the car. When we move our head to the right, the car is accelerating. We can see that the car is accelerating. This means that these stereocilia are going to be glued to their seats. They're going to be depolarized. The passengers were moving this way, so they're going to be glued to their seats this way. So we can see that on the left, the opposite happens. When we turn our head to the right, we're accelerating this way. These guys are going to go this way. This means that it's going to become hyperpolarized, and our brain is going to sense that. Now, this pattern of depolarization and hyperpolarization, these are converted into action potentials, which are then passed along through our nerves and into our brain, where our brain corrects our posture and our eye movement. Now, the utricle and the saccule, they hold an otolith organ, which works in a similar way. So when the otolith is at rest, it has its little hair cells, which are connected to the underneath of the otolith organ. So we can see it kind of works in similar ways. So when we accelerate our head, this otolith organ is going to move and jiggle the hair cells underneath, which is going to cause a pattern of depolarization and hyperpolarization, which will then be interpreted by our brain as movement. So this brings us to our next important concept, which is that of nystagmus. So nystagmus is the brain's attempt to keep a stable visual image while our head is turning and moving. Now, when we rotate our head to the left or quickly spin ourselves around, we have what is called fast movement of our eyes to the left. And then we will have slow movement of our eyes to the right. So that would look like if I was spinning left, while I was spinning, I would have fast movement, slow movement, fast movement, slow movement. This repeating of slow right and fast left movement of the eyes is what we call nystagmus, specifically rotary nystagmus. So while I'm rotating, while I'm turning, this is called rotary nystagmus. Nystagmus is always defined by which direction is rapid, not slow. So in our rotary example, we had a fast movement left. That is called left-sided nystagmus. So fast left, slow right. Fast left, slow right. Now, when we stop spinning, something else interesting happens. The hair cells in our otolith organs move in the opposite way the brakes on our car. So what we have is called post-rotary nystagmus. So the golden rule is post-rotary nystagmus should always have fast eye movement in the opposite direction of the person that is spinning. So, for example, if I spun around on a chair 10 times clockwise, this is left, this is right. If I spun around clockwise, so I'm spinning right, while I was spinning, I should have fast eye movement to the right. And when I stop abruptly, I should now have fast eye movement to the left. I should have a post-rotary nystagmus that is to the left. This is exemplified during a Baronet test. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that right, but this is a test which uses a special chair to spin around the patient 10 times. If the patient is spun to the right, they should have a left post-rotary nystagmus. So how can we test this nystagmus without making people feel like they're on a cheap roller coaster? Well, we can do what is called a caloric test. And this caloric test refers to the amount of heat in the solution that we are putting in the patient's ears. So we are going to use warm water because we're nice. Never use cold water. It's extremely, extremely painful. But we're using warm water to bring about nystagmus, remember that fast movement, on that side. So the warm temperature of the water changes the flow of the fluid in the ear, which causes our brain to think that we're rotating. This causes nystagmus to the same side as the warm water. Remember, normally, caloric test, the nystagmus should be to the same side as the warm water. So as always, thank you so much for taking the time to learn with us today, and I hope that you like and subscribe for more content. Thank you.